This series of author interviews is brought to you by Leisure Press and the Book Reality Experience, turning writers' dreams into book realities.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to another series of our interviews with authors. And today we're joined by Peter Shearing, author of the brand new book, Glacier, which is coming out at the end of December 2022. Good day, Peter. How are you?
Good, thanks, Stan.
Great. And where are you joining us from today?
I'm living in Hobart, or near Hobart in Tasmania.
Fantastic.
Beautiful sunny day here today, 26 degrees. I believe everybody's breaking out their bathers and going to the beach.
Fantastic. Which kind of leads me to, how does a man that's sitting in Hobart, Tasmania, even on a summer's day and even on a winter's day, whilst it might be a little bit cold in Hobart, Tasmania, it's not exactly an alpine glacier, which is what your book's all about. So how do you come to write about that?
I've always been interested in the island of Malta. My wife was actually born there. She emigrated to Australia in 1963 when she was 4 years old. And I've been always interested in it. And because my wife is Maltese, she has Maltese citizenship, and I do have that now myself. And because I was coming up to retirement, I thought I'd like to write a book, and I'd like to write a book about Malta. But I just I really found it hard to find a topic I could write on, because I didn't want it to be a non-fiction. I wanted it to be a book of fiction. And then I was just reading an article in a magazine about Otzi the Iceman, who was found in the Italian Alps in 1991. And I thought, I've got an idea. I can tie in a story of Malta into this, and so it developed from there.
So Otzi was an actual person. He was discovered in an alpine glacier back nearly 30 years, well, 31 years ago now.
Yeah.
What was his story, or what have the architects, good grief, what have the anthropologists told us about him?
He was born approximately 3,200 BC. He was about 45 years old when he died in the Alps. He did die a violent death. Just trying to think. He was actually born and lived near Verona in Italy. I did a bit of research, but the research is actually updating all the time. I noticed there's a new release about what they found out about him today, which I haven't read yet. So it's always updating all the time.
That's interesting. And I assume that they've placed him near Verona through DNA linkages of the DNA patterns that we've got nowadays, etc.
Yes, it's through DNA. They've actually found some living relatives in Austria through the DNA match.
That's amazing. So you decided to take Otzi, a real life, honest to goodness person who was found in a glacier, and construct a story around him or around someone else?
The story is about someone else. It's about a boy growing up on Malta. It has been prophesied by his ancients that he will rewrite its people's history, because the people of Malta, they're still learning about the prehistoric Maltese. All they're finding, they've got ruins of temples there. They're finding scant evidence of villages, but there was no written language and there's nothing there. So but basically through anthropology and archaeology, they're learning the story of their ancient Maltese.
So that's happening. That's happening now, because when when I think of Malta, I think of the Knights of the St. John's Cross and the hospitals that they built in Malta, and Richard I and Richard the Lionheart being held, etc. So all the crusades that came through it. But 1100s, 1000s, I know scant information about Malta. So is there a gap in the Maltese history?
Well, Malta, being stuck in the middle of the Mediterranean, it's basically at the crossroads of civilizations. There is hardly a civilization, European civilization, that hasn't influenced it in some degree. It was first settled around, they believe, 5,800 BC from people from Sicily, possibly from Sardinia, and also from Italy. Then they went into what they call the temple culture. That was a culture who built the ancient temples that are there now that you can see. And then there was a gap where they believe Malta was actually abandoned for about 400 or 500 years. Then all of a sudden there was a new culture appeared. And where they used to bury their dead in caves and underground hypogeums. The new culture actually did cremations. And then they survived for about 2,000 years. And then there was I'm trying to think now, there was the Greeks, there was the Phoenicians, there was the Romans, then there was the Normans, then the Arabs, and then from the Arabs, then there was the French and the Spanish. It was actually part of the Spanish kingdom, and it was the King of Spain who actually gifted Malta to the Knights of St. John when they were kicked out, when they lost their position in Rhodes.
And that brings me up to the only knowledge that I really have of Malta, although I did visit it once, and it was fascinating and beautiful. But it's interesting that you've gone back to the temple culture. So this is around about the same time as New Grange was being built in Ireland, so about 3000 BC, just slightly before the Great Pyramids were being built in Giza. And your character, now forgive my pronunciation of him, but is it Kadesh or Kadesh?
Kadesh.
Kadesh.
Yeah.
He grows up in Malta. The prophecy is told about him, but then he travels. So you take us through the ancient Mediterranean.
Through to Sicily. He spent some time growing up in a village, living in a village in Sicily. And he gets caught up in a storm and he gets washed across to the Italian mainland. And I've set that up around the Straits of Messina, where it's fairly narrow between Sicily and Italy. From there, I don't want to give away too much of the story though, but he meets up with the love of his life that he had when he was a teenager. He meets up with them through Providence, and they start working their way up through Italy, having quite a few trials and tribulations, danger and all the rest of it. And I won't go any further in the story.
Fantastic, because we don't want to give away too much of the story at all. But we start from Malta, we travel across, we can watch the ancient civilizations and their prophecies unfolding, and our young man travels up through to end up approximately in the area that Otzel, the real person, ended up.
Yes.
So why has a man from Hobart, Tasmania, apart from the fact that, yes, your wife's Maltese, why did you fix on that period of history? Why did you decide to go that far back? Because as you've explained, you could have gone to one of 14 periods in Maltese history. I
find that period absolutely fascinating, mainly because there is not that much information about it. I love the temple culture in Malta. The Tashin, where Kadesh grows up, is actually a series of 4 temples which developed over around about 2,500 years. The first temple, Tashin Far East, which is not much left of it now, was actually built around about, they believe, around about 3,600 BC. And then there was another temple built after that around about 3,000, 3,200 BC.
Fantastic. And those temples, one of those temples actually appears as part of the cover of the new book that's coming out, yes?
Yes.
Which we've been lucky enough to be able to find the right image to fit in and to make it old. And we're blessed with a very good cover designer that helps us to do those types of things. Yeah. With regard to writing then, has Peter Shearing always been a writer? Is that what you've spent your life doing?
I used to enjoy writing way back when I was at school. I wrote quite a few, I wouldn't say controversial, but my essays tended to be my school exams tended to be longer than what would be expected. But I did enjoy it. then there was a long hiatus, and then I just wanted to do something new with my life when I was coming up towards retirement. And I thought, well, writing a story would be a good start. So.
And when you say coming up for retirement and that long hiatus, what were you up to? Sailing around the world, studying archaeology?
I spent nearly 30 years in the Defence Forces.
Oh, very good. The Australian Defence Forces.
The Australian Defence Forces, yes. So,
excellent. And was Hobart always home? Did you go back to Hobart after retiring?
I was born in northern Tasmania and raised there, spent my childhood there. I joined the Navy when I was about 15, 16. And the rest of the time I spent on the Australian mainland, on the Big Island up north, mainly in Sydney, but I was also in Canberra, in Melbourne, in Darwin. I'd visited Perth on a number of occasions as well.
Fantastic. And so now you've approached retirement, as you say, you wanted to pick the pen up again. So is this the only book that's going to be coming out of Peter Shearing, or now that you've done it, or will you be going for a follow-up?
I've thought long and hard about that one. Depends on how well Glacier goes, I think. But I do have a couple of ideas for a follow-on book. I've been thinking of one set basically the same sort of period, but over a much longer span of time, though.
But within the same period of history.
Yes, yeah.
But almost a saga.
Yeah.
Excellent. And with regards to your writing, do you have special tricks and tips and techniques that you do? Do you have to be in the same room at the same time? Do you write for 12 hours a day, or do you write when you can fit it in? How does the writing happen?
Well, Glacier actually took me close on 4 years to finish.
Was that due to the research, though? Was that because your research was fastidious?
Not so much for the research. It was just the fact, when I started writing, I was still working full-time. So my full-time job did take me took me all over the state. There was some long hours involved and all the rest of it. So it was basically, I'd only look at it probably once a fortnight or something like that. And I'd write probably a few hundred more words. So then last year I got into it again, and then it stopped because I had to continue working beyond my retirement date due to circumstances at work. So, and then this year when I actually fully retired, well, the biggest thing was that this year we decided to sell our house and buy a new house, but we had to wait for 3 months for it to be finished building. So my wife and I were in an Airbnb for 3 months, so I had a lot of time.
What was it like writing in an Airbnb then? Were you getting up religiously at 6 in the morning and doing 6 hours worth of writing, or were you again fitting it in around the rest of life?
Just fitting it in around the rest of life. Basically, of an afternoon, I'd probably spend about 2 or 3 hours just writing in the afternoon. Over a period of a week, I'd probably write about 10,000 words.
10,000 words over a period of a week is good going. I mean, there are some people that would struggle to write 1,000 words or even 10 words over the period of a week.
If I do have any advice for any up-and-coming authors or anything else like that, one of the hardest things I found was, yes, it's a good idea, you can sit down and write a book, but when you sit down and write the book and then you set your word count, that is the hardest thing, trying to meet your word count.
So did you use any, because there are tools out there that will set word counts and set periods of time for you that you have to write for a couple of hours and take a break, or a word count and take a break. Did you use any of those, or was it just self-discipline?
Just self-discipline. I'd get an idea and I'd write it. And then I'd review, and I'd review back over the work just to make sure everything fitted in okay and everything flowed freely. Towards the end of the story, when I basically had the story finished at one stage, but it was well short of the word count I wanted. There were ideas that I developed that I hadn't followed through on, that after reading through, I had to just to fill them out a little bit as well.
Well, of course, the key is that word count, whilst, if we're talking about a novel, yes, there are constraints or expectations, I suppose is a better word, that the average first novel is going to be somewhere between 70 and 95,000 words, unless it happens to be a science fiction where one has to develop your own world, and you can have a few more words to play with that. Novels anything under 70,000 would be novelettes, and anything under that might be a pamphlet. But actually, when you look back in history, some of the best novels ever written have been very, very short word counts. So it's more important that the words that are in it work. And having seen yours come back from the first pass of editing, there was very little that had to be done to that. So obviously the 4 years spent were well spent.
Oh, thank you. Yes. Well, as I said, it was basically a process of updating and reviewing all the time. So each time I updated, I'd have to go back and review. Sometimes I actually reread the whole story right through just to make sure everything was going flowing.
And why did you, we'll get onto the editing process in a moment, but why did you decide to go hybrid publishing? Why didn't you decide to send your manuscript out to the Penguins and Simon & Schusters of the world for a traditional deal?
I did try a couple of online publishers earlier on in the piece, but what put me off was the fact that they owned your copyright. You had no control on it. Once they had it and they edited it, what they did, they owned. And I didn't like that at all.
And did they comment on percentage of royalty shares, or how long they would go and do on the rights, etc.?
When they got to that point, I basically switched off and disconnected.
So you sought us out and you came down the hybrid path. Now, obviously, we insist that our authors do everything a traditional author does, and that includes editing. So how was the editing process? How did you find that?
I found that quite good. There was a few places where, yeah, I've questioned it, but I'll take advice. So they're the people who know the score. So
the interesting thing is that authors can always come back to an editor. It's a dialogue, or it should be a dialogue. Yeah. So you don't have to do what an editor does, or an editor advises, but occasionally when an editor advises A, B, and C, and authors push back, sometimes we do have to intervene and say, well, actually, grammatically, that's more correct, or this is more correct. But you didn't have errors like that. There was only 1 or 2 pickups with regards to typos or grammar. Mainly, it's down to a fresh set of eyes looking to make sure that your timeline's correct, or that you haven't diverted off into a story that actually loses the main thrust of the whole overall book.
Yeah. So early on in the piece, I think I might have only written about 15,000 words at the time. I was actually starting to doubt myself. And so I was talking to one of the girls I worked with who works in Sydney. And she said, send it to me, I'll read it. So I sent up to her what I had. And she came back about 3 or 4 days later. She says, I can't wait until you finished it. So that was a bit of a fillip to me. So.
Excellent. And that's what the encouragement we need. We don't want someone to kill us off with damning praise the first time that we send a book out. So what's the biggest tip that you would give to yourself 4 years previously, now that you've gone through the process?
Don't procrastinate.
Just get on and get it done.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And for anybody, as you said, you've given a couple of tips already, but for anybody that's coming to do this for the first time, what would your top few pointers be for them?
If you're going to be writing about anything factual, whether it be fiction or non-fiction, check your facts first. Do your research. I'm sure I'll get some comments on mine from people saying, oh, that's not entirely right, but that's not entirely right. But my comeback will be, well, it is fiction.
The best advice I ever got, I wrote to one of the leading laser engineers on the planet, and she lived in Austria, funnily enough. Obviously, her English was much, much better than my feeble Austrian. And she came back with an explanation about a ring laser, which sort of tied in with what I wanted in the book that I was writing. And I went back to her and said, if we did this and this, would it be possible that it could do this? And she wrote back and went, absolutely not. But please remember, you're writing science fiction. She said, you're not writing science. Yeah, take the basis of it, but, extrapolate and go this way. Yeah. So, yeah, writing a fiction book, you've always got that fallback that you can go, well, actually, yes, it's historic, fiction. So
Yeah.
And of course, your fiction ends up with a reveal at the end, which we're certainly not going to give away. How excited are you, not for the reveal, but for the fact that the book comes out in December?
Oh, I'm very excited. So's my wife.
Excellent stuff. And we're going to be setting you up with web pages and connecting you with various social media platforms. So people are going to be able to see and read about Peter Shearing and Glacier. Before we end, though, I was wondering if you'd like to take part in our little quickfire question session that we usually ask our authors. How does that sound?
Okay, yep.
Excellent. So, author Peter Shearing, author of the brand new book Glacier that is coming out in December 2022. What is your favorite book?
I, Robot, Isaac Asimov.
And what, if you have one, is your least favorite book?
Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire.
Yeah,
I do actually have it.
That's a tome and a half. In all of life, emotionally and creatively wise, what turns you on?
History.
And conversely, what turns you off?
Controversy.
Controversy.
So, yeah.
And summer or winter?
Summer.
On a completely free day to do anything you want, who do you spend it with?
My wife.
And I'm guessing, given that your previous career, mountains or oceans?
Oceans.
And what is your favorite movie?
Favorite movie? It'd have to be probably Gladiator.
And one song, if you have to listen to for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Tequila, believe it or not.
Yeah, you can take the man out of the Navy, but yeah. Who makes you laugh the most?
Who makes me laugh the most? Politicians.
Hence your dislike of controversy. What smell do you love?
Roses.
And what smell do you hate?
Diesel.
And other than a writer, or indeed any of the professions you have done, what would you like to be?
An artist.
And what profession would you not like to do?
A doctor.
And
Can't stand blood.
No, you can't. Yeah. Surgery's definitely out then. And if heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you get to the pearly gates?
Well, actually, I am a very religious person anyway, so I'd hope that God says, I forgive you for all your sins.
Excellent. Thank you very much for your time, Peter. I really, really look forward to the book coming out. I hope it's a huge success. It will be available on pre-order within the next couple of weeks from the time of this interview. So by the 1st of December, it'll be available for anybody to go online and pre-order, and we'll have the links in the comments below.
Okay, thank you, Anne.
No worries. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you.
Bye.
Hi, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel for more readings and author interviews. And don't forget to hit that button to be notified every time we post new content.